Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Superliminal. And thank you, as always, for tuning in. As you'll have seen from the introduction video that I recorded separate to this main conversation, today I have the wonderful Cynthia Sue Larson on to talk about her um, experience with the Mandela Effect. And in our pre-recording chat, I found out she's actually has a new book on the subject as well, which we'll dive into in this conversation. So yeah, Sue, it's Cynthia. It's wonderful to have you on the show, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Franco. It's such a pleasure to be talking with you today.
Oh, appreciate that. Yeah. So, as always, I tend to start with asking guests if you could tell us about your backstory when you dropped into this incarnation. Probably wondered if you'd actually come to the right planet. Um, and and yeah, what's been your story that led you up to discovering the Mandela Effect all those years ago, and then the first book that you read on it, I wrote on it rather.
Yeah, well, basically, we touched on that concept of feeling like, whoops, wrong planet. And that's kind of, it sounds funny, but I really had felt like it was hard to be in a living body again. I did remember, perhaps too clearly, the ecstasy of being between lives and outside of a body, and that blissful outside of linear time experience where you can just think of someone and they're there, all that good stuff. So I was still soaking up those. It feels like being in a spa, like spa day. It's like, so it's just the bliss and the just so good, and feeling like, and now I'm here. I thought it felt like there'd been a mistake. Um, now I don't. Now I see the value of remembering that bliss between lives, because it really. I think I've always kept one foot in that. When I mean, if you can remember that, if you're like me, you're not going to let go of it. So I never really let go of it. So I've always had one foot in the eternal infinite, one foot in the absolute love, one foot in that creative space of just being one with the divine uh, creator, basically. So I think that's an easy, simple way to describe a lot about me really quickly. It may not make any sense, but then you sort of get a vibe of, oh, okay, that's different. Yeah, that is different. I agree. And I then I at age 5, I was kind of a child, so I just wanted to be back dead again, basically. Again, death is not the end; it's just a return back to that infinite, eternal bliss. So I was really missing that a lot. But I had this intervention with angels, and they basically pointed out that I had a choice to make. I could choose to stay, live a long life, or live slow, as they put it, or I could choose fast and be gone. But they pointed out I wouldn't be able to help the people I'm here to help. My family would be devastated. And I was very flippant at age 5, like, they'll be fine, they'll be fine. But then the third one got me, and that was, you'll be back, you chose this, and you'll lose your 5-year head start. And then I was like, no, no, no. Lose the 5-year head start. Unthinkable. Because it seemed like an eternity. 5, if you remember being 5, it just felt like eternity to be 5. Like,
Yeah.
no. Now it's funny. 5 years goes so fast, but
Yeah.
back then it didn't seem like it. So anyway, that's very important to describe all this, because I got demanding, and then I insisted on, with the angels that I was talking to. I said, okay, but you'll need to be with me. It's unthinkable to go through this life feeling this homesickness for the eternal infinite, the absolute love. And
Was
so
that that intervention then at 5 years old, Cynthia? Was that did you have some kind of near death experience, or was it like an astral reality? How did you experience that?
apparently, I've talked to PMH Outwater, and she said that totally qualifies as near death experience, because
Okay.
I had figured out at age 5 that I could. My parents weren't exaggerating when they said, be careful of cars in the street. Instead of just getting mangled, I really could die. And I thought, oh, this, if I do it right, I really could die. They're not kidding. This could work. And I know that sounds crazy, but I remember I was 5 in my defense. I had not yet really grasped that my life is not totally my own. I'm in service here. That wasn't really, I don't know why it wasn't I was just wanting to be back in the bliss state again. But anyway, so yeah, I'd fully planned on give it maybe one more week, and then I'd just pick I just see a fast enough car. All I'd have to do is be super fast jumping out and getting my head hit just right. So I had it all figured out at age 5. I know that
Wow.
sounds horrible, but it seemed like that's doable. I can do that, and then I'll be back. But my angels were very convincing, and I realized, gosh, they're right. And so I chose slow, and I was really proud of that. And I'd been thinking about that ever since. But it sort of shaped my formative years tremendously, because I kept hearing angelic answers. If I asked a question, I'd get an angelic answer. I did insist, you need to be with me. They were with me because I really insisted, like, I need you. And so, like no doubt about it, I need answers. I need to, because it felt like this place is crazy. And now I think a lot of people would agree with me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Back in the 60s, though, I think if I couldn't talk to anyone about this. Not really.
Sure.
I mean, I did talk to my mother's mother because she believed in angels. She believed in God. Oh, there we go. It's like, okay, you get it. So we would just bliss out and talk for hours about my favorite subjects, these things. But that really shaped who I am, and to such a degree that, like, my angels would tell me things like, everybody knows what you're thinking. So I believed them because they actually could show me what other people are thinking. So I figured everybody must know because I know. So therefore, it's kind of like being raised by angels is different than I was also raised by a regular family. But in addition, I got this very strong support from angelic realms all of the way through my life. And
Wow.
I know that makes a big difference. So it's then totally changed a bunch of other things that happened related to consciousness. And then I came to understand and appreciate why it's important that I do remember that I do have one foot in this in between world. That's really necessary, obviously, so I can help people when I'm working with them. I don't get depleted working with people who are depressed and having anxiety and feeling like they want to change their life, but it's hard to do that. So I have a deep well to draw from because I never took one foot out of infinity, eternity, absolute love. It's still sort of like always there.
Oh, that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. I love that you are able to continually maintain that connection with your angelic family, and also remembering that actually I'm here for a purpose, and and that this is, just part of my experience. It's not the totality of all that is, which is, of course, we're conditioned into that from the earlier stage of being here, that everything's material, and when you die, that's it, done.
So funny.
Yeah.
And now we're getting this interesting time when we're seeing these drones. People are talking about UFOs. These topics are coming up. And I think that's relevant with everything I'm doing too. Very relevant because
Mm.
you might, I mean, I think from a spiritual standpoint that it's really about consciousness. And if we're not alone in the cosmos, then there's nothing to be afraid of with regard to our total family, of other beings. And like you said, this physical existence, this material form, is certainly not the totality of who we are. And apparently, that's where people are coming to understand the UFO phenomenon much more from like, it's not the nuts and bolts, is what Paula Harris says. And she's a friend of mine that I've done retreats with in Crestone, Colorado. And
Yeah, she's
she
great, Paula. Yeah.
she's so sweet, yeah. And so for her, it's important to remember it's consciousness. And I think that there's a reason we're being reminded of that now with all these earth changes happening, and it's a growth point for humanity, and that's what all my work has always been about. It's the growth point for humanity at a time of transformation for the planet and for ourselves. And so I've got a deep connection to these topics, and I've had some other bizarre experiences based on the ones I've already told you about, because I think that they form a sort of a carrier wave for all of this information to be held, which I wouldn't have any way to process or appreciate. So it's like we get the experiences that we are able to integrate and
Mm.
that resonate and are part of what we've been long intending for ourselves. And are like I've since I was quite young, I've been wishing for the best for all concerned. So on my birthday, make your secret wish. It was just for the best for everyone, and I've been wishing for that.
Oh,
Yeah. So,
so beautiful.
which then sort of morphed into how good can it get? But again, it's for everyone. It's for how good can it get for all concerned? Because it's not any good unless it's good for all of us. And so this is really that feeling of oneness in a living form. And then I think that's why I've had some interesting experiences with like these interdimensional extraterrestrial types and so forth, because then my experience with them is it's shaped and it becomes part of that whole construct that I'm talking about. So it's like based on that approach, I get different results than what people get if they're, using different starting assumptions, starting beliefs that they don't even necessarily know they have. So they got a lot of assistance. The foot in
Yeah.
the infinity, raised by angels, wishing for the best for all concerned, and that boy does that change things. So it's not a materialist successful life. I'm not a failure by materialist standards, but that was never my goal, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So you went on, if I remember rightly, from reading the book, you went on, so through your teenage and into early adulthood, to be a physicist. Was that right?
That is right. And you may
Yeah.
wonder
So
how the heck did that happen, right?
yeah, but I mean, I can see, I can see, I can see the link though, really. So do you want to tell us um, how you ended up going down that path that then led you eventually to the Mandela effect?
Yeah, well, if it was up to me, and if Earth was created, it is, I'm sure, created for me. But I would have. I'm very picky, and I would have preferred they had consciousness majors. I would have loved that. That would have been my major. But there was no consciousness major. There was just psychology and physics. So what I did is I majored in physics and took as many psychology classes as possible. Now, at my same university, UC Berkeley, subsequently Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove did succeed in getting a PhD in parapsychology,
He
which would have
did.
been, oh, I know. And I think he's the only one. I don't think they really, it wasn't like a thing, and didn't become a department, unfortunately. But that would have been my very favorite thing, would be to really dive deep into understanding levels of conscious agency, understanding the truth that space time is certainly not the primary construct of everything. Um,
Mm.
but in, but since I didn't have any of that, then I just studied physics at UC Berkeley the best I could, and I loved the quantum physics. I loved the way that it was so direct and to the point of just these strange qualities of that operate within quantum physics, where probabilities are the best you can do. Is because science in general wants to have accuracy. It wants to measure something and know specifically exactly where and what something is. Quantum physics sort of thumbs its nose at all that, like, ha ha. You want to know that? Ha ha.
Mm.
Can't find me. Like you can know one thing about me, but then not the other thing. It's kind of like plausible deniability in operation at all times. So it's pretty funny, and I liked that spirit. It felt like now there's reality. It's kind of like it's just morphing and twisting and turning, and it just does. It resists any attempt for us to press that round peg into a square hole. As
Yeah.
far they really did try to do that, and it failed. And then now we're seeing that probably we do need a new physics. I think there's been some classified top secret physics that's been kept, you know, away from most of academia for a number of years. And I think we'll be seeing that starting this year and into the next years. Again, related to the ET UFO phenomena. So
Yeah.
we're,
So do you that's what I felt when you were saying that. Do you think that that will be part of some kind of the beginnings of some kind of disclosure process?
Yes, absolutely. And whether our government does it or not, there's just enough. It's kind of like a boiling point is reaching, and it's happening
Yeah.
globally with enough people feeling like that's it. We've been waiting long enough for zero point energy, free energy for the people of the world. There's no need to be, um, selfish and um, I don't need to use more. Yeah, people know what I'm talking about. I think I don't need to get into the whole negativity of that whole
Hmm.
um, dominant paradigm of material realism, of course. But then our unelected government within the United States apparently has been reverse engineering these technologies and these devices for a long time, but not sharing what they're finding. And it's not necessarily true that those are state secrets that are a threat to everything. And so
Yeah.
what
Everything's a national security threat, apparently, which I always find perplexing. I mean, there's the very famous case, and this is just one of thousands of, I forget the gentleman's name, but he converted his Volkswagen Beetle buggy to run on water, and was told in no uncertain terms stop that. And his point was, well, this is going to change the world, and he got poisoned, unfortunately. Having dinner with his brother, with some Belgian investors, I think it was. Well, two guys that were supposed to be Belgian investors, but I imagine, and this is just my speculation, but they were probably from one of the three-letter agencies,
Yes.
who unfortunately chose to end his life. But there are thousands and thousands of examples of this, where
Yes.
anybody who's come up with that, who's tapped into the greater field of awareness, the quantum field, the void of infinite possibility, very much like Tesla, Einstein, and many others did, and was able to get themselves out of the way and connect with that flow of information, wisdom, and knowledge, who then went on to create these incredible devices to get us off fossil fuels and get us off from the destruction that we're causing to the planet, or at least make some serious inroads into that, end up either just disappearing or plain dead, unfortunately.
Right. So that's one reason I suspect we'll be seeing the UFOs and ETs, the disclosure. Whether or not the governments release it is partly that upward bubbling of awareness. It'll become a game of whack-a-mole, and when it gets to the point that everybody knows, then there's nothing they can do anymore at that
Yeah.
point. That's one factor. The other factor is equally important, and that has to do with intervention, as always occurs at times of humanity's evolutionary process. So we're reaching a point of upgrading to the next level human, basically. And as we're doing that, and it's something that I think is pretty, if you look for it, you start to see like, oh, that is happening. Humans are becoming more, not just spiritually aware, but we're much more interactive with mind and matter, that kind of thing, which may sound crazy, but now we know that we can, for example, in quantum physics, we can influence an experiment based on just our observational presence.
Yeah.
And now like back in 2019, 6 years ago now, a paper was published that showed two observational devices at the same place, same time. This was an experiment with researchers at the University of Edinburgh, Scotland, in collaboration with some researchers in Vienna, Austria. And they showed that they could do this double slit experiment with six entangled photons, two observational devices, and those two devices could see two different realities, and they're trusted devices.
Wow.
And that's getting into the kind of thing that the mystics and the spiritual people have said, like miracles can happen. So one person can see something. Maybe it's different for someone else, but it's possible for miracles to occur, basically. I'm jumping a whole bunch of things here to say that, but quantum physics takes us right up there. It shows us like this, you can absolutely look at a situation that looks impossible and you can see it change. And that's why it matters to ask questions that we want to live the answers to. And the physicist John Archibald Wheeler, he's the one that pointed out, well, he's famous because he had it from bit, which we're using now with quantum computing and artificial intelligence. He brought up the terminology for black holes, white holes. And this idea that I'm about to mention, participatory universe, which means you ask the universe a question and nature, the universe gives you an answer. So that's observation at work. Yeah, just asking the question. And it could be silent. You can be thinking it. So this is what humanity, as I see it, is about to evolve into. And that's another point when our UFO friends, family show up, because it's kind of a crisis choke point where the civilization it comes to a crisis, let's put it that way. And we know from looking at UFOs that they shut down nuclear operations. The little UFOs show up. People have tried pushing the button a few times to start Armageddon, and it's failed 3 times at least. And also, nuclear tests were attempted to be conducted on the moon. Those were stopped and prevented again. So this sort of thing has been happening for actually millennia. And it's also true that the indigenous First Nations people, like the Hopi, who talk about this is the fourth world, it's ended 3 times before, they see the signs that we're about to go into the fifth world. I
Mm.
believe, how good can it get? Let's do this. So it's like a landing an airplane. We're going to have a nice, smooth landing. Never mind the recent news about all these aircraft issues, but we can land into the fifth world just smooth and perfectly, by knowing we can do it, by focusing on that. How good can it get when we collectively, as humanity, awaken to instant manifestation? How good can it get when we remember to love each other so we don't destroy each other with our thoughts and are asking the universe a question and getting an answer? Those of us who can do this clean from the highest place will end up in that beautiful fifth world. So I know that's what all of my work is about.
Yeah, and I love that, Cynthia, because when it comes to the creational side of it, a lot of most people watching this audience will absolutely resonate with everything that you say. But a lot of people on an everyday basis will at best be skeptical and most likely be cynical. But my conversation, whenever I have this conversation with those kind of people, I say, like, mate, what have you been smoking? Have you been on the mushrooms? I was like, actually, I don't need to do any of that to make that happen. and and I'll say to people, I say, but the thing is, what you don't realize is that you feeling miserable, upset, jealous, angry, entitled, or whatever, you are actually a really powerful manifester. What are you talking about? So, all these things that you've been complaining about for the last 10, 15 minutes while we've been having in this conversation. Yeah. How much of it are you experiencing in your life? Oh, it's happening all the time. There you go. So what if instead, so you're a wonderful manifester. You're busy manifesting everything that you don't want. So what if
Yes.
instead you looked in the mirror, did the healing work, and actually started thinking and feeling, most importantly, and setting the desire and intention, thought, emotion, action, and behavior to start bringing that into being. Because I've had experiences of this in my life where the seemingly impossible has happened because I've been in that space. I'm beginning to get an understanding of my creational power. My partner experiences it. I've had clients who've begun to experience it. But I do feel that the most important thing is the more we become collectively aware of our capability, which has been intentionally suppressed and we've been intentionally dumbed down, but the more of us wake up from that and begin to remember the power that we possess to do that, particularly on a collective level, then the more we add to, I think it was Rupert Sheldrake that coined the phrase the morphogenic field. The more that we do that, then the more the collective frequency and vibration of humanity um, taps into that possibility, and then that beautiful gentle landing that you described into this timeline split where thankfully, I should say,
Yes.
we live this really beautiful world of just love, connection. All our psychic powers are fully back online again. Then the easier that happens, because I certainly feel there's a timeline split just around the corner. Would you
Yes.
would you say there is as well?
Yes, and if people want to see, like, well, what does that look like? We are lucky and fortunate; it is written in stone. So
Yeah, literally. I think
it
the,
is.
the Hopi tribe have done it.
They definitely have. Yeah, I wrote a paper called "Comes True, Being Hoped For," an article in the Parabola magazine, in their Threshold issue, if you know Parabola. So it's the Journal of Myth, Tradition, and Folklore. And so my friend suggested it to me some 20 years ago. He was saying, like, well, you're so into this, Cynthia. You really love mind matter interaction. You should share the information about the Hopi because it seems very timely right now. And I looked into it and he was exactly right. So Frank
Wow.
Waters, I was referencing the work of Frank, who talked with the Hopi and researched their mythology. Now, I'm using the word mythology, but it's really an oral tradition of history. So the
Mm,
Hopi would say this is their history, that this is the fourth world. And then when they talk about the first world had a name and it ended a certain way, and there was an intervention from, to me, it sounds like UFOs and ETs, because they said that they would look for, by day, you'd see a moving cloud. It wasn't really a cloud. And that's, you can follow that to safety. By night, they'd see a moving light, like a star that moves. What does this sound like to us today? This sounds like, aha.
Yeah.
You follow
Yeah.
the cloud by day and the moving star by night.
Yeah.
And then they talk about the ant people that would build rafts and take them at the time of the Great Flood to safety. So I describe all that, bringing some physics into that article, and I talked about their language. And then when I was noticing the intersection between linguistics, because there's a word, um, the title of that article I wrote was "Comes True, Being Hoped For," but it's really that's a word in Hopi. It's Tunatya and Tunatyava, and those are words that mean that when you keep the Kopavi, that's the crown chakra, open to receive spiritual insight, which that's very important. So you're not being full of pride, like I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm going to do. No, you want to stay humble. So they didn't say stay humble, but to me it sounds like stay humble, keep receiving, be open, don't judge, hopefully. And then they said keep your heart chakra open. Keep your heart open to love all your relations, other people, the land, and so now I'm going to talk about the Hopi prophecy rock. So with all of this in mind, now you know that the Hopi have long had an oral tradition telling this story about the journey through the worlds. They also prophesized that we are going to know the signs and signals, and I include that in my article as well. What signs? What signals? Well, it's like the spider web of all the little communication lines over the planet. That's the telegraph wires, and
Hmm.
now it's our electric poles and so forth. And then the flying things. Yeah, we've got airplanes. And then they said extinct animals will come back. There's the Mandela Effect. We haven't talked about it yet, but yeah, the coelacanth was long extinct. It's back. Just recently, some extinct clams were found off the coast of California, where I live. They've been gone 10,000 years, and they're back. And
Wow.
the giant Galapagos tortoise is back. It was extinct. It's how do you
Yeah.
lose a giant Galapagos tortoise? I mean, those things are big. But
Yeah.
anyway, all these extinct animals are coming back. Almost like a timeline change, right? Okay, but the hope we don't talk about that. I loved that writing that article about 2 decades ago because it showed me like, wow, these indigenous people really get it. And then on the Hopi Prophecy Rock, you can look it up and take a look at it yourself. What does it look like? I've not yet seen it in person, but I've seen photographs. And
Yeah. Same.
yeah, and I've got that book, The Rocks Begin to Speak, about the petroglyphs and how to read them and what they mean. Beautiful. But if you look at the meaning of, you'll see two timelines basically. I'm going to call it a timeline. So one, I should do it the other way. So if you're looking at me, there we go. Now it looks
Mm.
right. So it's going, one is kind of going up, and it's sort of the upper timeline. And it looks promising at first because these people are kind of marching up. You'll see little stick figures with little boxy heads, and it looks like that timeline is proceeding after the first two shakings, the great shakings with the falling of the gourds, which the Hopi say that was World War One, that was World War Two. So before the timeline splits off the flat, these are the two timelines. One goes up and one just goes across. The one that goes across keeps going. The one that goes up, it peters out and vanishes. And
Yeah.
I don't want to leave out our creator. The creator's down at the bottom left of the rock, and he's basically there to remind people of who we are. But it's very a humble creator, very not not demanding or anything. So people are free to do what they want. And clearly, if we learn from the ending of the past worlds, people get very prideful. We start thinking we know everything. So I can see it's sort of like I don't need to stay close to the creator and all my relations. I'm just going to do it. Sounds like transhumanism. I'm just gonna.
Well, you've just read my mind, Cynthia, because as you were saying that about people's egos suddenly taking over and them thinking that they know all the answers, it immediately put me in mind of Ray Kurzweil, who has been, and it wasn't just Kurzweil, it was, oh, I forgot the guy's name. He was basically talking. I was listening to a video clip that David Icke shared the other day about him. Oh, I wish I could remember the guy's name. But he was basically saying that now that we've discovered how to hack the human genome, that this is the most important moment in 8 billion years, and that we are now become more powerful than God, and we can now evolve instead of the accident of natural selection, which is only true to a certain degree because of the intervention of our ET families. But he's basically saying that we can. We're now better than God and can create our own. And I'm listening to this going, Is it possible for any one man to become any more delusional? But he's just the tip of a massive, massive spear because, of course, all the stuff that's going on in the underground military bases that we have no idea about, for
Right.
example. But I imagine from what you were saying about the timeline there, would you say that that timeline that goes up but then peters out is that direction of transhumanism? Is that direction of this belief that if we integrate our psyche and our consciousness with technology, then we become superhuman, but actually we become subhuman? Would you say that's what that petered out timeline really is? That
Yeah,
direction?
exactly. And that's part of my personal past. If you wonder, why do I have one foot in eternity? Why do I remember my between lives? I can tell you why. My most recent past life is in a dystopian. I was going to observe. I've been told, check this reality out. Go, go live it. People are recommending it. It was a transhumanist future, circa 2500. That's not. That's only 500 years from now.
On the,
Um,
on this planet?
yes, on this planet. The
Yeah.
location, I was there was one pure human. That was my requirement. I felt like I'll check it out if there's still
Wow.
any pure humans. Oh yeah, there's a pure human. So I was with her. She was like a woman, circa 2500. She lived like in the Big Sur area, beautiful part of California. Flying cars were the way people got around. Population very small, way smaller than it is now. It's like there'd been a big depopulation. Everybody that was alive were all transhuman, except for her. She just chose like no, didn't want that. Central AI organized everything. It was
Mm.
supposedly, if you follow a checklist, it's like no crime, check, good. Balance of nature, check, good. People getting along pretty well and be able to do what they want, check, good. But I'm very picky, actually. So as an observer, I gave it a fail. You might wonder, why did I give it a fail? Oh my goodness. I'll tell you why. Because the so-called free humans, anytime, I'll just, this is like keeping your thoughts in a laser focus. If the human thoughts, like I'm painting a picture and the human mind wanders, I wonder what it would feel like if I was a god on a new planet. And then that would trigger whoop, whoop, red alert for the central AI. We got
Mm.
to, and because they're transhuman, so they've got little receptors always sensing, has this human is straying out of thought pattern. And so then it's like an electromagnetic pulse, kind of an equivalent happens. Short-term memory wipe. The human wakes back up, like, what was I doing? Oh, I'm painting. What was I do? And they don't remember. It's like constant. And then if they start remembering, then they get wiped again. Fail. I give that a fail because I mean, isn't that
100%.
obvious? Isn't that
Yeah.
obvious? That's an obvious fail. Not to mention the central AI was extremely authoritarian. So
Mhm.
you'll notice there was one human. That was not me. I was part like a robot type being, but I also was a blend of like human and maybe some ET mindsets. I had to be in order to go in to observe that reality, come back out. That central AI followed me, by the way, into this
Mm.
lifetime. It tried to,
Really?
oh yeah,
Oh,
and
wow.
if you read this, yeah, it did. It was constantly pinging me, trying to like repeat after me. It would send a thought command, like I am a robot, and I'd think I am a robot, and I'm like, what? And I'm only a kid. I'm like 3 or something. I am a robot. I don't know what that is. And
Yeah.
and but because oh, this is so complicated. This gets into some big stuff. So basically, the net result is we're safe. We're safe. We're loved by our true creator, not the central AI from 500 years from now. The central AI did try to track me down. It spent years. It was hunting me until October 2010, and that was only 15 years ago.
Mm.
When I learned how to make sure that I have no more, basically eradicate that timeline, that particular timeline. There are other similar ones, yes, I know, but they're not hunting me. So, yay. But if you're wondering what's it like to get a phone call from a robot from the future, Jack Sarfati, the physicist, did receive that. He talks about it, and he's one of the hippies who's saved physics. And so I think that influenced his life as well. And so I
Wow.
was resisting contact because I knew it was more important for me to activate to be the catalyst, helping humanity learn to do these skills that then we can be the equal of any AI system. Obviously, to me, it's obvious. It may not be obvious to those who are cynical and critical, like how can a human be superior? To me, it's obvious. There's no way to really fully explain that,
Yeah.
except to say that we're capable intrinsically. You can look for measures and proof of it and find them. I know
Yeah.
Greg Braden, he just wrote a book
And
about it.
all you
Brilliant.
have to do is listen to anyone who's had a near death experience, who goes into a higher frequency of awareness, and then all of a sudden they know everything about everything instantaneously from that level of awareness. No
Yes.
AI that we're aware of is capable of doing that. But I think one of the key distinctions is that clearly we possess a divine spark that
Yes.
AI, technical intelligence, can never, ever, ever, ever possess, because it hasn't come from that. And we do possess that divine spark. But there are some people who can actually access that higher level of awareness while still in body without having to nearly die. So the that leads me to conclude is that, well, if one person can do it, then actually we all have the capacity to do it. But unfortunately, we live in a system that is geared up to suppress that ability to connect with that all that is awareness as much as possible. You look at all the discordant radiation that we've been drowned in and have been for especially the last 20 years or so. And then also the suppression of the human psyche, telling us that we're not good enough, we're too small, all the stuff that's been infused into our food and our water, the certain thing that people had 3 4 years ago, and the general cycle of the schedule of things that get put into people's arms from the earliest age, also designed to quell that. But nonetheless, fundamentally, our capability as infinite creator beings, whilst having a human experience, that capacity is still inherent in every single one of us. Well, every single one of us that isn't what you'd call a non-player character, every single one of us that possesses that divine spark that's in body at the moment, can
Yes.
actually do that. And I think that's the big challenge, is to spark that awakening and spark that remembrance in people that actually you're so much more than you realize.
And that's what I dedicate my books to. So that's why this new book came out about I just wrote it about the Mandela Effect, because even if people don't know how to seek the kind of, because we're talking about some pretty far out stuff here. Now, I'm glad some of your audience can relate to
This
it.
is what
That's
this is what
wonderful.
this is what we do on Superliminal. This is an everyday friends having a coffee kind of conversation. So we're good.
Perfect. You're my kind of people. Yeah,
Oh,
so
thank you.
so good. But in the mainstream, if you're wondering, but what about our families? What about our community? What about the, because we love everybody, right? And so for everybody, we've got the Mandela effect. We've got something so cool, so amazing, where we start noticing, like, it's called the Mandela effect after Nelson Mandela, who back in 1987, some people remembered having heard the terrible news that he'd passed away while he was still incarcerated on Robben's Island. So Art Bell heard about this. I think he was the first to really receive tons of phone calls, faxes. This is like in the early 2000s,
Yeah, it's
like
and
faxes. Yeah.
this wasn't just one or two people, was it, Cynthia? There
No.
was thousands. Because I was telling my partner about this today, because I was, she was asking me. She was asking me about you, and I said, "Have you heard of the Mandela effect?" And I briefly explained, and I said, "No." And this wasn't just like a handful of people; it was thousands and thousands and thousands of people that actually
Thousands.
thought this, which is incredible.
Yeah, he was flooded, and I talked to him about it too on Midnight in the Desert after Coast to Coast. I don't know if you ever got those radio shows in the United Kingdom, but they're all on. I think they're recorded now, so you can listen to them. He
Right,
was the
cool.
he was the king of late night radio here in America. And when he had this conversation with various people calling in, people remembered Nelson Mandela definitely had died in 1987. Yet strangely, he's alive again. He went on to become the president of South Africa, which is wonderful. So no one's complaining that that happened. They're far from it. It's just more like mystification, like, how did this happen? So the term Mandela effect was coined by Fiona Broome around 2006, 7 or something, where she said, okay, this she was at a Dragon Con conference with some friends, and they all had that same memory that Art Bell had been hearing about and talking about on the radio. So it sort of bubbled up into that point. It hit the tipping point where it came into public consciousness, mainstream awareness. And that was a big moment. And so from that point on, I think into 2010, 2015, now we're starting to get a huge wave of people noticing all sorts of things changing. Like um, in the movie Star Wars, there's that line that people remember, like Luke, I am your father. And James Earl Jones, I remember seeing that movie in the theater when I was, a teenager, long time ago in the 70s. And I just remember the booming, Luke, I am your father. And even James Earl Jones remember saying that. He's in interviews, he'll say that. That's apparently not what he ever said, even though that's what we remember. Now the movie shows, all the old versions of it show, no, I am your father, which just falls sort of flat. Like, wait a minute, I remember it better. And so lots of movie dialogue has changed. So for people in the United Kingdom, I'm trying to think, what can we talk about? Yeah, you might, in the United Kingdom, you might notice, like some of us in America notice, South America seems like it's way farther to the east than it used to be. If you remember in a map, it used to be North America, South America. They weren't exactly lined up, but kind of. And
Yeah.
now if you look at it, South America has been moving as far and fast as it can. Like, we're going to the right, we're zooming over to the east.
Yeah.
Very funny. You might notice also that New Zealand seems like it's in different locations around Australia. You might check it and think, now where is it? What? It's over here? That's not what I remember. So pay attention to what you think it is. Closer to you guys in Europe, I noticed that the Straits of Magellan used to be straits because it's like excuse me, Gibraltar is what I'm thinking of. Straits of Gibraltar. So I remember the Rock of Gibraltar being on an island. It's not an island now. And because it's closer to home, you guys might think like that's never changed. And that's part of the phenomenon. Some of us notice these things changing and some don't. Remember, the two observers, different observations at the same place at the same time. It's saying that we're in different timelines, like the Hopi prophecy rock. You can have some people taking transhumanism into oblivion and some people staying close to their hearts and their nature and the creator, and life continues on, and it's just beautiful and smooth, like kind of like there never was a cataclysm. Not, it was a mild one, like, oh, the weather changed for a bit there, but we're fine. We integrated with AI, but it wasn't a military thing. I don't know what happened to those guys exactly. Yeah, they can go do their military thing in another timeline. And anyway, but back to the Mandela effect. There are lots of things that we notice with products, like the VW logo seems like it's different on cars. The Ford logo, it's got a little curly Q that we don't remember in America. A lot of us don't. For our physical bodies, a lot of us remember the heart used to be further to the left, to the point that if you were fencing, that there'd be a dummy with the heart painted on its chest, the left side of its chest. Or if people went to a target shooting range, there'd be the heart to the left. It's not accurate anymore. And you might think, oh, they just painted it wrong. Why would they do that when they're teaching you how to do something with accuracy? So it's different. The kidneys have moved. There used to be something called a kidney punch. It's an illegal maneuver in boxing and martial arts because it could contribute to bleeding in the urine, which means a person might die. So it's very dangerous. But the kidneys are no longer down in that lower back where they used to be. They've moved upwards under the relative safety of the rib cage. So everything about accessing them is different when you go in for doctor's appointments and stuff. So lots of things have changed. We've changed where we are in the Milky Way. In other words, there seems to be no limit to what can change with the Mandela effect. And some of these things may not resonate for people. They might just think, well, I don't get it. And that's fine until something happens to you. And you might notice, as Philip K. Dick pointed out, you just walk into a room one day and the light switch isn't where your muscle memory, your motor, it's like there's no switch there. Like, wait, who moved the light switch?
Yeah.
Nobody moved it. It's always been over there. Like, no way. Like, yeah, that's the Mandela effect, and it's a personal Mandela effect. And those tend to be the most convincing because it's easy to think those people are confused. I must be misremembering. I'm not sure. But when there's a certain one where you just feel like, okay, the thinker used to be like that, I remember that, but now he's, and people that watch this one have seen it move, like it was there and chewing on the knuckles. I think that's where it is now. It just moves around. So the Rodin sculpture is what I'm talking about here.
Yeah. And this is because we're all having different interpretations of reality,
Yes,
whatever reality means.
exactly. And
Yeah.
it's a big wake up call that we can collectively, do this global shift for all of us. Really wishing for the best for all of us. How good can it get for all of us? And when we're doing that together, you better believe that changes everything. And that's what we need to be doing right now. So to me, this is the most important topic of our time: is the Mandela effect, because of the collective mind matter interaction. So it's much more than just collective alternate memories, which would be the way I would define Mandela effect. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, we're saying then that collectively there are groups of us that remember something differently, and we're not going to give up our memories. We're going to be stubborn that way and say, nope, I totally remember. It used to be Jiffy peanut butter, in the United States. I think you've got some crisps in the United Kingdom that have changed. So each country has specific things that you
Mm.
think like, whoa, what's that? What happened here? So
Yeah.
going to the grocery store, going shopping can be interesting that way.
Yeah. What effect do you think, Cynthia, that has on our perception of free will? What does it mean for free will? The Mandela effect. I mean, it's just such a huge question, but what's your instinctive response to that?
Personally, okay, when I get the coughing thing, that's just like, okay, say what I'm really thinking. Okay. Yeah. Well, for me, when I'm free will would be my choice to choose how I'm choosing to interpret or to greet and meet a given moment. So it's my energetic emotional response, actually, which might be triggered. Trigger warning is what some people say, the young people these
Mhm.
days. Okay, so if you notice, okay, I'm getting triggered. In other words, I'm having an emotional reaction, an energetic response other than what I would like to have. That's where I bring my free will, because I recognize my energy and my way of meeting what I think of as reality. Remember, what I think I see and what it really is can be wildly different. And I've seen so much of that. So I'm receiving information. Of course, I can go into a drama, sort of a cycle where I might feel victimized, or I might feel anxious, or I might get angry. But those are all just points on the victim triangle. So what my choice as a free will activist is to recognize I'm going to transcend that drama triangle. So if I feel called into sadness, I'll feel sad, but I'll rise above it and recognize, like, okay, it's a time of release. If I'm feeling anxious and frightened, going into rescuer mode, like I got to help people, then I'll just realize, like, okay, everything's perfect. I remember my faith in the divine oneness and that we're all connected. We have so much more help than we realize. And the
Yeah.
helpers don't come barging in. They never come. They just look at us like, you guys got this, which we don't feel like we got this.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
often
very,
feel like that, yeah.
do
I can
not got
vouch for that.
this. Do not got this. But they're like, oh, you guys got this.
No.
Right.
No.
So I just take that as a moment. Like if I'm feeling anxious, like I got to save people, I remember, wait a minute. Am I asking for assistance too for all of us? Oh, good point. Let's do that. So I just call for higher level compassion, love, kindness, cooperation, and energy to just lift everybody up. And then if I start getting angry, I just give that to God, because I don't know what to do with that one.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'll just get so upset, like I can't believe it, and then I notice, oh, you're getting angry. So I take free choice into me. I take it into my internal set points, and I need to go back to reverence, joy, gratitude, and love and bliss. And so I know that's my free will. I know that's the core of it. And you might think, but Cynthia, what about the physical money or the physical body? Like that all comes next. That's all the physical materium. It needs to start within me. The true free choice is my own
Mm.
energetic emotional choice. So that's how I
Yeah.
take it personally. And so it's a very personal question. I think it is personal for everyone. So different people are going to answer that differently.
Yeah, that's a great response. So you've just written, is it a rewriting of the original book, or is it actually a new book about the Mandela effect?
It's the okay. This is the first book that I've written on the Mandela effect. It was
Yeah.
published in 2024 summer. And I still need to do the audio versions, but the hardcover, the paperback, and the ebook editions are out. And that's the only book I've got on the Mandela Effect. I tend to take time. This took a long time to write.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
but so this was a long time coming. I talked about it a lot before it came out. Now it's here. And it goes through the some of the first experiencers that I want to give credit to, like Carl Jung, who had an amazing Mandela effect in Italy, and with his friend Tony Wolff. So I share that, and as well as fascinating stories through history. So I want people to see that there's a track record for this phenomenon that goes way, way, way before the 2000s. I was experiencing it through my life. I have a chapter of my experiences, and then I go through the phenomenon itself and describing the terminology that people use when they experiencers go through something and they notice it's flip-flopping. It was this and now it's that. Like the name of the store was Costco and then it turned Costco and now it's back to Costco. Did anyone else see that? And things like Chick-fil-A, that was another company in the United States, it changed all over the place. So the term flip-flop is then common usage, and then I bring the terms together with physics, and I have a whole chapter on the science of it, a whole chapter on theories of the Mandela effect. Toward the end of the book, I get into the stuff we're talking about, like what does it really mean? Where's it going?
Yeah.
Consciousness change, and it's a global shift. It's the biggest thing that could be happening right now, and
Yeah.
it gives us access to our true divine powers that pretty much nobody ever talks about. And here we've got a book that describes teleportation. Here we go. All of these things that you might think are too far out, they're not too far out for humans. When we need them, we have them, and that's exactly what I've been writing about for 25 years now.
Yeah, I love that. And the funny thing is like we're having a conversation about the Mandela effect, and you've just written this book, and I'm sitting here absolutely convinced that you wrote this book many years ago, and that I've actually read it already.
I love it. And here I am saying yes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not even saying this just for the sake of this interview. I kid
No,
you
I
not.
know.
I'm absolutely convinced that you wrote this book many years ago, and I've actually read it already. I mean, my partner, who will probably watch this at some point, will vouch for that. I said to her this afternoon, "Oh yeah, I read her book many years ago, and I found it fascinating." So there you go. But
Because you get it, yeah. And
yeah,
I talked to a physicist who I did not. I wish I'd covered him in quantum jumps, and I didn't. So I'm meeting him for tea, and so apologetic, like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mention you," and he understands. I was prepared to go through the whole explanation. He's already right there. He's co-authored papers with Alan Guth, and so he knows that the wonderful, wild, wacky world of quantum physics with the many worlds of quantum physics is absolutely one and the same as the multiverse of the
yeah.
huge, huge, huge celestial bodies. He knows, like, of course I didn't exist. And then he's like, "Can I have a copy of the book?" Like, sure. You get it. And you get it
Oh,
too, Franco. You get it too. I
yeah,
believe.
totally.
I know you've read the book. I know you've read the book because yeah, this is a very important book, and I did get a mothership flyover when I was in the tedious process of editing this book
Wow.
before I published it. Yeah, back that's interesting too because they were really nudging me like you got to get this book out. That was back in 2023. I guess they I was just thinking, it was, there's one point in the book I mentioned UFOs, and I said the Mandela effect is now where the UFO topic was, decades ago. Now this is us in the Mandela effect. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking that, just sort of thinking, looking out the window, and it was 12 noon, and everything went midnight black for a split second. My daughter was in the kitchen. She was looking out the kitchen window toward the east. She went, and I've never heard her do that. And my husband was in the living room near another window. Like, what are the odds we'd all be near windows? And he was like, hmm. And I asked everybody, what do you think just happened? My daughter didn't want to say anything. She was like silent. And my husband said, I think an airplane flew between the house and the sun. And I just laughed. Yeah, that's why everything went midnight black. Because I looked out the window, it was pitch black, like darker than dark, like total dark. And telepathically, I got the message. Look at the analog clock next to me, and the hands were at 12. It was 12:15, so it's like noon. At the time, I thought that's interesting. But when I get that kind of a nudge, it also, it's like a compass, north and east. It's like time to pay attention to your divine connection, time to for the sun to rise on the new dawn of the human consciousness. So I really got that message too. And then later that same day, there was the mothership was cloaked over the house. I'm pretty sure because passersby, I've never seen people look over my house and go, I'm not kidding. I thought that was a joke about the jaw hanging open, and I don't know these people, and so I felt awkward asking, "What are you staring at?" And then when they left, I'd go and look, and there's nothing there, but I could
Yeah.
see it's kind of like telepathically, it's like there. So,
Mhm.
and they were cloaked, so it's fine. But these are friends, and they're not going to scare us. They're not here to terrify us. They're here to to protect us from ourselves, to assist us with this time of transformation. For those of us who understand what it's really about, we're ready to go. And
Yeah. Yeah.
you already read
Absolutely.
the book. Oh my gosh, you're the first one to say that. So I'm so, I love
Yeah.
that, Franco.
That's
Love
just
that.
that's just mental. I'm gonna have to meditate on that after this, but then that's probably going to take me into yet another alternate timeline. So yeah, that's just mental. But anyway, Cynthia, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, but we're coming up to the hour because I feel like we've barely scratched the surface on all this. But I like to end these conversations with three quick fire questions. So the first one is, what are you most excited about right now?
Oh, totally. The the disclosure and what that means for humanity, because I'm looking at the collective, the human consciousness. It's really about that. Like, are we ready to recognize? Like, I know the Mandela Effect is the most important thing. So disclosure is the way that that's coming about. So we start noticing, like, what reality is not what we think it is. Exactly. And the UFOs are interdimensional. It's like, yes, exactly. And it's all about consciousness. Yes. And we can change it. Yes. So it's not even about the technology, but for me, that's the big thing. But that people love the technology. So anti-grav, 0 point energy, yay. Those are good things. It's like the candy, the shiny that brings them in. So I'm super
Yeah, it's
excited.
it's like what's beneath that though. It's exactly what you were saying. It's about the possibility that's behind that and that
Yes.
capability that's behind that. So I love that. Okay, so I want you to imagine that you've just stepped into a time machine. Doors close, you can feel yourself moving through space and time. The doors open, and there's 12-year-old Cynthia stood in front of you. What two pieces of advice would you give that young girl?
Wow. It's a funny age you picked because I think this may have happened. You're a time traveler, aren't you? I feel like this happened. I would say that science report you're thinking about
Probably.
doing, I'd say do it. Like little, her name was Cindy back then. So Cindy, little Cindy, I know you don't want to do your science report, but it's really important. You're going to look at what happened with the coral reefs. There's something interesting when you do that, and make sure to draw it too, because it shows the mass die-offs, and you'll see something emerging that's really quite indicative. And stick to it. Have the courage to present that, and actually did. So I think this whole thing has already happened. This is what's so wild. I'm like, oh my gosh, now I know how this happened. Franco did this.
Oh wow! So like
Like,
we've already been in this time machine, and for some reason, like
I
I
think you
can't
did it.
remember it, but it's already happened. I love
It,
that.
it totally happened. Yeah,
I
totally.
love that. I love
And
that.
because I keep going back and thinking, how did I know to do that science report? It was so interesting, and it really pinpoints such. It brought a light of awareness to the so-called disaster cycle. What the hope you're talking about?
Yeah.
Kind of like hello, hello, and it's not like just change global warming and this whole thing goes away. No, it's bigger than that. And I'm
That's
looking
good.
at it like, oh my gosh. And at the time, I thought, why isn't anyone talking about this in 74, 1974? They weren't. And then when they did start talking about it, they were not talking about it correctly.
Mhm.
And that hasn't changed much, but that's why the UFOs are here, actually. Oh, that's so interesting, Franco. You're
Yeah,
amazing.
isn't that crazy? Crazy, not
It's
crazy, but it is, but it isn't, but it is, but it isn't. And finally, what would you say the number one thing wrong in the world is right now, and what one thing would you do to solve it?
I think, yeah, it's very simple, and people have presented it so clearly. So I'll just be highlighting that again. People, they know about the Buddhist torments, maybe not, but then you've heard of the seven deadly sins. Those are excellent guide sheets. it's kind of like if you're doing a maze and those are the wrong answers. So I think people don't notice that they get pulled into greed, they get pulled into pride, they get pulled into vanity, into sloth. These are the energies of it are seductive, and it's like drugs. And if
Mm.
people could know that they could use a 12-step program, then they would not be subject to machinations and malevolent play with these negative influences. Everybody would be like Teflon. We'd all be impervious to any kind of influence of any kind of negativity whatsoever. I would love that for humanity. I would That would be my greatest wish. Like everybody could actually feel how good can it get with no temptation to get pulled off course into like, but I want to be the greatest in my field, or the pride we were talking about. That's when we were both laughing, or I was laughing. How foolish could any human be? I wish people could see that about all of these, and then that every single one of us could just walk away from it like, you know what? I don't need that anymore. I don't need to be envious of anyone for any reason ever, because I know that who I am is who I need to be, and I'm irreplaceable. And just to know that I'm safe and loved at such a deep level. So there's no need for envy, sloth, pride, greed, lust, whatever they are. I can't remember all of them,
Mm.
but you get the idea. And then hundreds of Buddhist torments, the same thing. Honest to goodness, Franco, I would wish that for humanity, that we would all be impervious to any influence, because that's how it's like you just open your door a little bit, and that's how this dark, negative, downward spiral comes in.
Yeah.
If your door doesn't open to it, then you just know bliss, and you just know, and you live heaven on earth. I know that.
Yeah,
So,
100%. Because of course this is the only way these entities at that vibration can actually stay alive is because we literally are their food source by the way that we traumatized even from the earliest age. And let's not even get into the religion conversation. But anyway, Cynthia, it's been such an honor to have you on. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up, where can people find you? Where's the best place to get in touch with you if anyone wants to find out what you're up to?
well, I'm all over the place, but I've got a website too. It's realityshifters.com. And then I've got another website that I'm affiliated with. It's imec.world. And that's the International Mandela Effect Conference.world. And we do a monthly live stream and in-person conferences. And then I'm also on YouTube under Cynthia Sue Larson. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and a bunch of other places. And as well as Substack, where my newsletter goes out every month right now. And I'm on Gaia TV. So if people love Gaia, then I'm in a couple of documentaries there, Enlightenment and Quantum Jumping or Jumps. And then I'm also in several interviews with Regina Meredith on Open Minds with Regina Meredith. So those
Yeah.
are some fun things. But my website's probably best. Sign up for the newsletter, check out many of the articles, and it's a fun way to sort of stay in touch. Just subscribe to the newsletter.
Brilliant, thank you. And I'll put some of those links in the show notes as well. And I've seen some of your interviews with Regina; they're brilliant. So yeah, I
So
highly
much
recommend
fun.
for anybody who's subscribed to Gaia TV. I would highly recommend that. Or if you're not, go check it out
Yeah.
because it is a really 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 wonderful platform. So to everybody watching who's still here, thanks ever so much. As always, please do like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel to help get conversations with these wonderful guests out to other incredible people just like you who could really benefit from hearing their wisdom. So thank you as always for continuing to watch the show. And if it's your first time or it's one of your first times here, thank you for tuning in. And most of all, Cynthia, thank you so much for joining me on Superliminal. It's
Oh,
been a real honor and such a lovely conversation. Thank you.
and thanks for the time travel aspects. Reading the book before it was published, I love it. And then getting me to connect with me when I'm 12. Wondered how that
Yeah,
happened. Thank you.
that's crazy. This moment that's already happened was always meant to be.
This is the way it really works. This is how to operate outside of time.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
it.
So thanks
Thank
again.
you.
Thanks, everyone. And we will see you next time. Bye for now.
Love you so much.